Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Unshakable Living, where we take those shakable aspects of your life and help you make them unshakable. Let's start today's episode off with a little vocab lesson. The definition of a generational habit or pattern happens to be personality traits or behaviors that are passed down from parent to child. Whether we want to admit it or not, eventually we do actually turn into a version of our parents. Yep, you can find me singing all the way down the grocery store aisles, just like my mom did. Keep that definition in mind as I tell you a little story about a trip my husband and I just took. Last week, we went on vacation, just the two of us. Our flight for Florida left at 2:40 p.m. This gave us plenty of time to drop the kids off at school, give the pups some extra play time and all the extra snuggles and love, and still triple check that we packed everything we needed for an 11-day cruise. Now, let me back up a few years. Okay, fine, probably more like 10 to 15 years, and tell you that when I was in my early 20s, I traveled with my parents a lot. But that story about codependency is for another time. When planning the trip, my mom would always book the earliest flight out that she could, usually like a 5 or 6 a.m. Her reasoning for this meant that we would get to our destination sooner and maximize the first day of vacation. This concept was always something that made perfect sense to me. However, it also meant that I needed to set an alarm for 2 a.m. and leave the house while it was still dark outside. Fast forward to when I began traveling with my now husband, I carried on with this tradition of booking the earliest flight possible. Even if check-in at our hotel or resort wasn't until 4 p.m., I was taught to maximize that first day. Here's the thing though, setting an alarm for 2 a.m. sucks. And it gives me massive anxiety. I would usually set at least 2 alarms in fear that one wouldn't go off and we would somehow miss our flight. Not that that irrational fear even mattered because I never slept and was always awake well before the alarm was going off. I would have this sick, anxious feeling the entire way to the airport and honestly never felt like I could settle down or breathe until we got to our destination. Not to mention the fact that I am simply not a morning person. I can promise you that I am not my favorite version of myself at 6 a.m., let alone at 2 a.m. It took several trips of just my husband and I, without mom, before I started to question, why am I still booking the earliest flight out when it no longer serves me? Cue a generational habit. Booking that early morning flight was ingrained in me. Simple as that. Maybe you were told to finish all the food on your plate at dinner time, and now you catch yourself saying the same thing to your kids. Maybe one of your parents was very short-tempered and you find yourself kind of losing your shit on a daily basis. Did your mom have a glass of wine after dinner each night and now you two seem to enjoy a nightcap? These are all generational habits, things that we were taught most of the time subconsciously by our parents and even grandparents. Now, not all generational patterns are bad or negative. In fact, one of my favorite habits that I have learned from my mom is family mealtime. Each night, my husband and I sit down at the kitchen table with the kids to eat dinner. It is a non-negotiable for me. I love to cook and enjoy the fact that I'm providing everyone with a healthy, home-cooked meal. I learned this from my mom. It's a pattern that I pray my children are picking up on and continue to pass along to their own kids. That being said, there are some habits that are worth breaking, like a 6 a.m. flight that causes you severe anxiety. So, how exactly does one break a generational habit or pattern, something that you might not even be aware of? It starts with that self awareness. Take inventory of certain things you do or even think. What patterns have you picked up on throughout the years? Are there thoughts that you have or actions you take subconsciously, but in reality, they don't actually serve you? Becoming aware of the fact that my entire life I took an early morning flight was step one. Taking ownership and admitting to myself that at this point in my life, when I really value sleep and I have 2 kids and 2 dogs and lots of chaos all the time, admitting that a 6 a.m. flight is not the best option for me was step two. Forgive and move on is step three. For me, there was nothing to forgive. I completely understand my mom's reasoning for taking the first flight out. But in some cases, if the habit you've inherited is truly negative, whether it's anxiety, abuse, or addiction, forgiving the generations before you is a vital step. Lastly, become the model for future generations. Become your favorite version of yourself and be the one to break the cycle. But at the same time, honor those healthy, joyful habits you've gained and always be grateful. We are not stuck, nor are we meant to live our lives exactly the way our parents or grandparents did. Whether it's an action you take, a personality trait, something you often say or even think, we have the ability to take action and make a change towards something that better serves us today. You won't see me giving up my grocery store karaoke anytime soon, but you better believe that I'll be avoiding that early morning flight at all costs. What thought, habit, phrase came to mind for you? Is it one that you hope to pass on to the next generation, or something that you'd like to take the steps to break and change it? I'd like to say that as January comes to an end and we move into February, people tend to either reevaluate or scratch their New Year's resolutions completely. I'm here to tell you, don't give up. If you started strong, stick with it. And if you've already fallen off the wagon, who cares? Today is always the best day to start again. If you're looking for additional accountability or are so lost you're not even sure where to start, oh man, do I feel you. But it's not a coincidence you stumbled across this episode. An unshakable lifestyle is worth pursuing and is often more easily obtained with a guide who has been down a similar path. If you feel like you need some additional help, please reach out to us at unshacableliving@gmail.com. And in case you haven't told yourself yet today, I love you. I am proud of you, and I believe in you. Until next time, stay unshakable, my friends.